Whenever she spoke, assuming she could, they could better gauge her recovery time. She had a long road ahead of her, a path of tangled brambles. The person who wouldn't be able to recover was her assailant, a cheap thug named Fong. That was the news the detective had delivered, recapping it in the hallway outside Mallory's room. "Yeah, he's dead." On that fateful morning of March 18th, a witness had come forward and identified Fong, Jimmy providing a second opinion, since he'd interacted with the man, having endured an assault by the hired gun for his interference in the questionable business practices of his boss, a certain Mr. Wu Tin. Fong had been sought by the Department of Homeland Security because he was a known illegal. ICE had captured him and locked him up. That had happened in late May, just days before Mallory's eyes first fluttered, as if the shooter's incarceration had given her fresh life. Her eyes had opened again this morning, the same day Fong had been found dead in his cell, his belt tied around his neck, the same belt wrapped around the lighting fixture on the ceiling, the thin metal bed overturned. Just how he'd gotten his hands on a belt remained a question none of the authorities cared to investigate. Good riddance to bad trash. So, the truth was, Mallory was awake, and Fong was dead. The world was balancing its quota of hope and justice. "Thank you, Detective," Jimmy had said. Fong dead? It left only Mr. Wu Tin to chase. He remembered his only ever encounter with the dangerous Mr. Wu Tin, in an office above his Chinatown restaurant, Imperial Dragon. Fong had beaten him, all while his boss watched. But little did they know that Jimmy had a backup plan, incriminating evidence of the illegal activities that overrode a seemingly legitimate business. He'd been released that night, and was even given a takeout meal. Perhaps a metaphor, a last supper. It had come, of course, with a prescient fortune cookie. He'd tossed the meal in the garbage that night, cookie included. He didn't need anyone telling him his fortune, or his future. Jimmy McSwain decided his own fate, and his fate included vindication for Mallory. At the hospital, both doctor and detective left, leaving Jimmy with his sister, as it had been since March. "I'll get him. That's a promise," Jimmy said, kissing her forehead. She touched his arm, tried to smile. And she spoke. Her first words, "Jimmy, no." He hated hospitals. The antiseptic smell, the cool efficiency, the artificial brightness. Soon he hoped to take her home to Hell's Kitchen, back to where she grew up. Before guns, before death, where they innocently played stickball on the sidewalks. Mallory had always been a bit of a tomboy. She was tough, but she loved to laugh, her vibrancy having a way of drying tears. He'd promised to find peace for his father, and he'd delivered on that promise years later. He would do the same for her. Guns were the enemy. Family, that was his fortune, his future. He was babysitting, happily. It was a Friday night in mid-June. His mother, Maggie, was at work. The play at the Harold Calloway Theater on West 47th Street was in its final weeks. Triskaidekaphobia had performed decently on Broadway, but had never become the big hit Wellington Calloway and his producers and playwright had hoped for. They had secured 4 Tony nominations, but not one for Best Play. Such a result meant putting up a closing notice. Maggie said she didn't mind. It would free up her summer, just as she liked. Megan had gone back to work on the aisle too, which is why Jimmy was right now entrenched on the sofa, baby Joey in his arms, a bottle between his lips. Joey, Joseph, named in honor of their fallen father.